Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I'm gonna give this a moment to make sure it loads. I want to do it once. I don't want to do this twice. That's why I'm doing it live. It's like 2 in the morning. It's on my mind, so I don't want to do this. Yeah, there we are. It's on my mind, so let's go with it while I'm thinking about it. Earlier today, I watched a video from Sane Progressive. She was being herself, and I think it was called what was it? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And the video was fine. She was making a point about this thing of integrity, and someone apparently said something about MMT, and she went on a tear about MMT. Now, it wasn't really about MMT. It was more so about MMTers, if that makes sense. Now, hey, redneck economics, how goes it? So in making that comment, the person says something about it, and she goes on a tear. I said before, the woman is a force of nature. She's awesome. And she has a go at it, essentially saying the people are becoming somewhat of a cult. She said, "Shoo away from my page," like get lost. And ultimately, that it was somewhat pointless. This caused a kerfuffle. My wife said I make up words. Kerfuffle, a huffapaloo. This pissed off real progressives. Pissed them off royally, and they made their videos getting across their grievances. Here's the thing, man. Let's give context first. Debbie has what, 40,000 subscribers. Now, I know for me, I don't have anywhere near her count of subscribers, and there's a lot of people on my channel who do the MMT thing or who believe in it. And they can be pretty adamant about it. They are very aggressive in their belief in MMT. So magnify that by a level of like 10,000. That could be a lot of people who are saying something about it, or tweeting her about it, who are being pretty insistent about it. I don't know. I don't know how often people were pushing something on the page itself talking about MMT. I don't know how often people were tweeting her about it. I don't know. I don't know how often people were mentioning it to her. I suspect it was a lot. And she snapped off. She went in a tear. What's important, or that's the first part, that we don't necessarily know how many people were saying something to her about it. Have a little bit of compassion. That's the first point. Be a little bit more empathetic. The second point is it wasn't about MMT, not from her context. From Debbie's perspective, and I'm hoping I'm getting it right, the political apparatus for the most part is broken. It's completely corrupted. Any premise of MMT is based on getting into politics and actually being able to affect change. She makes the point that that is an impossible task. The process itself, the mechanism that's suited to do that, doesn't exist. Because that mechanism doesn't exist, being able to put in policy is somewhat of a moot point. You would never be able to get to the point to put in the policy. Now, mind, I'm saying this is her context, meaning anything that needs to get done has to take place outside of the political system. Being that it's outside the political system, that conversation is not really about policy. It's more so about us. This is her perspective. So that perspective doesn't necessarily take into account for MMT, because it doesn't get to the point of even talking about MMT. You can imagine if you're being inundated with people talking about it, and your context, your perspective of the world, how I organize the world in my eyes, doesn't accommodate it, because it doesn't matter. That can be a little aggravating. Like I said, she's a force of nature. She doesn't necessarily get across her grievances mildly. It's a hard thing to argue with her perspective on this, because I would say it's self-evident to some degree. I don't have the belief that it's completely broken, because governments fall. Even totalitarian governments fall. Even oligarchies fall. So it's not like an impossible thing. Yes, it can happen. But I don't necessarily think she's crazy for looking at this and saying, this doesn't work. You're not going to be able to get to the point of being able to implement that plan. And so what's the point of talking about that specific plan? It's like you're going uphill trying to explain it to people and trying to make that case when it a case that would never be made or articulated in law. I understand her perspective. Now, from the perspective of real progressives, they were pissed about this. They were extremely pissed. They were upset. They dedicated a lot of time to dealing with this idea of MMT and educating the public on MMT. And so they took it as somewhat of an insult. It's her opinion, dude. It's not an insult. It wasn't targeted. It wasn't this thing of, she did say a cult. That's fair. It's her perspective. It's her perspective. I saw, it just seems to be a lot of hurt feelings about something that's just her perspective. I saw Grumbein's response. He was pissed. He was pissed. To the credit of the people who are in the MMT thing, you have to understand how other people see this. Now, I understand people can be very aggressive about it. And part of my misgivings, and it's not really misgivings, misgivings is too strong, but it's the area that I'm trying to hit at, is whether or not the areas that I don't understand of the MMT part, if it's one of those things of like Democrats wanting to believe that Trump colluded with Russia. Democrats are always asked the question, or leftists always ask the question of, how are you going to pay for it? How are you going to pay for it? Now, this seems crazy since we're spending $1 trillion on military and nobody ever asks the military how they're going to pay for it. They lost $3.2 trillion just before 9/11. But they always ask the question, how are you going to pay for it? If you're going to try to give people health care, how are you going to pay for that, man? So I understand that a strategy comes up, and that strategy says, hey, you have all the money that you want because the federal government can make all the money that it wants. I understand that strategy seems somewhat self-serving to me, even if it's true. But that's a case that will have to be made to the public itself. Now, we use MMT for our military. So it's not like, you know, this is complete bunk and this is complete craziness. I don't think that at all. But explaining that to people, getting that across, is a separate thing. She has a different disagreement. The disagreement has nothing to even do with economics. It has everything to do with what she sees as a political system. You guys are having a question about two different things, meaning your context, your worldview is built around two different things. She's looking at it from the standpoint of, you need to extricate yourself from the system so you don't need to be a part of that system. You're looking at it from the standpoint of, you need to work between the lines of that system. Once you get into a political power, you can make changes using certain economic or fiscal policy. Just understand the context is different for both people. The argument that you're having, it's somewhat of a moot point. That's what I'm getting at. I'm just saying, being somewhat empathetic to the different person's context. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, man. It's like, can we all just get along? The left fragments miserably. It's tiring. These petty dramas. A little empathy goes a long way. Nobody was personally attacked by it. And yet people were pissed. They had feelings. When I was younger, And I've mentioned before, I had kidney failure at a young age. And I remember the first treatment that I had to get. And I went to, it was a facility. And, you know, you're young, you're a kid at 17. You're still grappling with this thing of your own identity, just as a person. And now you have this other new thing added into it of, and by the way, you're not going to be whole. You're going to have certain aspects of you that are missing that other people have. And those aspects, whatever those weaknesses are, they're going to demand that you receive some level of treatment to live. My doctor says your reaction was fascinating to me because you didn't have a reaction. It's like not being able to have a response. Well, I was having a reaction. I just necessarily wasn't having it externally. The woman sitting across from me, the woman was blind. She was missing a leg. She had diabetes, and she was having needles stuck into her. And she was screaming because she had dementia. And she didn't necessarily either didn't understand what was going on or didn't want what was going on to take place. You can imagine in that moment this idea of being like angered by this thing, or this idea of being like this pity saw case, or this why me, or that went out the window, completely out the window. There's no way, like there's no way I can look at that and say, woe is me. My mom, to put a finer point on it, when she was coming to the hospital one day. Now, during this time, my mom was still a single parent. I was in and out the hospital pretty much constantly. And in one particular time, I think that was during a hurricane in Richmond, the woman, I was in the hospital again. I was invariably in the hospital again. And in this particular time, I was bleeding really bad and I had an infection. And the surgeon came in and he kind of made this point of, look, we can't stop your kid from bleeding, so if I see him again, he's not getting off the table. Now, you can imagine this is somewhat jarring for a parent to hear. My mom was having her own medical thing at the same time, but she had to deal with her kid first. So that's what she did. She put her stuff to the side and dealt with her kid. At the exact same time, her job was telling her that, yeah, you may lose your job in this process. We're a capitalistic enterprise. We're going to do what we need to do to maximize our profit. And if you got a sick kid, you're not getting your work in. So all of this is going on. She's driving to the hospital one day, zoned out. Because, you know, as you go about your day, oftentimes you're zoning out, particularly when you're driving and not really paying attention. And she zeroes in on the radio and she hears these people arguing. They were like calling into the radio show or something like that. And as she's listening to him, she has this moment of clarity. These people are arguing about this ridiculousness and my kid may die. These petty dramas. I'm trying to make this point that there are larger issues. That there are things that are present and that matter. How people are being affected in our society just based on this poverty thing. How many people are being affected around the world, meaning how many people are being killed. Even if you're talking about just purely within the United States itself, the majority of the country is in poverty. We have a political system that is entrenched with corruption, completely entrenched by it. Open bribery, with a political or media apparatus that completely ignores the bribery, doesn't bring it up. Acts as if somebody getting $1 billion in no way is going to besmirch the character of the person who's getting the $1 billion. We have a maniac in charge that could start a war tomorrow in regards to either North Korea or Iran. It's petty dramas. %90 of the stuff that the people on the left talk about, they agree. I could even say 95%. I could probably even take that number a little bit higher. These petty dramas. These petty dramas. It's ubiquitous. I don't know what takes place on the right. I don't care what takes place on the right. I am particular to the left in this case, because I think this is the issues that face this country. If they're solved, they're going to be solved on the left. Meaning the left is the aspect of the country. It's the conscience of the nation of sorts. It's the thing that pulls the nation forward. Any real change that's going to take place to the country needs to take place from the left. Now, that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about, political apparatus or otherwise. I'm just saying it takes place from the left. Whether that's in some glorious emancipatory revolution that Sane progressive is talking about, or whether that's through political change, where you have a public that takes control of the political apparatus and institutes a government that makes those changes. I don't know which. I lean more towards the glorious revolution, because I got to be honest, I don't think those changes get implemented. Governments do fall, but when governments fall, that's literally a revolution. That's literally what Sane Progressive is talking about. Even in the rebuttal, it was brought up in the sense of governments fall. Now, if you're talking about political change, that's possible. I don't necessarily think the political apparatus is completely smashed to smithereens. I think it could be used for our ends. But not everybody holds that perspective. Nor am I have any feelings at all with people who don't hold that perspective. Zero. People feel different about that stuff. People have different political calculus. Their worldview is going to be different. It takes a certain amount of empathy to understand their worldview and move on. And this isn't targeted. So this isn't like I'm having to go at any one particular person. It just seems like these petty dramas, man, in regular life, yes. But on the left is a little bit more annoying, because it's dramas among people who, for the most part, agree. Across the board, they agree. Like, all the issues that you're talking about that often divide a population are not present on the left. And yet, petty dramas. So you have black progressives who are angry at white progressives because they didn't necessarily like something that that particular person said. You have calls of calling people racist just because they bring up working with the right. You have other cases. It's just aggravating. It's just aggravating. You have people who will peg and say Sam Cedar is something fundamentally different from Tim Black. 99% of the things, they would vote the same. You'd have, even right there, real progressives and Sane. Again, 99% of those issues, they vote the same. The distinction or the difference becomes the context that they give the world, how they judge and weigh the world. I guess what I'm trying to say is a little bit of empathy goes a long way. And again, that's not targeted. That's not aimed. That's just somewhat of a flat fact. How we're interacting with the world, how we're interacting with each other. A little bit of sympathy, a little bit of empathy. And by empathy, I just mean recognize that the person is a person, that they're going to have perspectives and points of view that don't necessarily agree with you, or that you don't necessarily agree with. But again, the majority of the people, or the majority of the items, they agree. That's the part that blows me away in this. It's like fragmentation for the sake of fragmentation. Everything becomes an inflection point. This particular person disagreed with X, and so this particular person is now not progressive enough. Whatever that even means. Petty dramas. Can we try to avoid them? That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. If something pisses you off, I understand it. If something annoys you, I understand it. It's something that's so annoying that it becomes an actual thing. Can it just be annoying? All right, let's see. Questions. Hit the like button. It'll help people to show up to the show. Oh, thanks, Anthony. I like the shirt. Real News is a good channel. Yeah, Alan, I like the shirt too. I gotta be honest. I just grabbed the first thing that I could find and put on. At the People's Summit, I was talking to Paul J. It was another gentleman who essentially gave me the shirt. He was like, "You're subscribed to the channel?" Yes. Here's a shirt. Thanks for subscribing. Sane Progressive's my favorite, but I wish she debated or went on the progressive alt-right shows. But she's not. No, but no, I don't see the point. It's not. If you notice, her channel is not pushing an agenda in the sense of it's not pushing a political agenda, if that makes sense. It is, but not in the context of a typical political agenda. She makes a very basic and factual point. I don't think her point is arguable. This political system, or our system of governance and media, is entrenched in corruption. How do you expect to get anything done in a system that's seized up in this way, that it's fully entrenched in corruption? It's overt. It's not even hidden anymore. This person gets $1 billion. This person doesn't essentially protects Wall Street. Everyone understands that Wall Street crashed the economy. No, the president who was elected on this fabulously progressive platform is the guy standing between the banks and the people. And he chose the banks. It's corrupt. It's corrupt to the core. It's hard to kind of make that case that it's not. Now, her point would be, you need to extricate yourself from the political process. I guess you can have a debate and say she's wrong and that you should stay in the political process, but ultimately it boils down to how corrupt you think the government is, and how, on whether or not you believe you can affect change within that corrupt system. I don't think she's crazy for saying go out the system. I don't think she's even wrong for saying go out the system. I don't. I'm just, for me it's slightly different. I look at it as all of this is going to probably going to crash. I don't see people changing, so to me it looks like it's going to crash. Now, at some point it will hit a wall just because of, you know, you have a finite planet. You're using resources as fast as you can use resources. Just from the standpoint of not believing in real things or pretending that real things don't exist, it will hit a wall at some point. Now, whether it hits a wall from societal degradation, from us doing something with science in regards to chemicals, water, or food, or whatever else that has some kind of adverse consequence, whether we're hit by asteroid, whether it's climate change, whatever the vagary, whatever the thing that ends up biting us in the ass, it will change us. Whether we want to or not, it will change how our society is arranged. Her point is, take power in your own hands and pull yourself out of the political process. Extricate yourself from something that's entrenched in corruption. She's not wrong on that point. I don't think she's wrong at all. It's just that that's called a revolution. Meaning, whether people do it or not, they're going to end up doing that. Period. It's a flat fact. The society is going to hit a wall. When a society hits a wall, people are going to have to handle that. Her point will be, do that from a conscious level, not necessarily from a haphazard level of just hitting a wall. Deal with the issues that are affecting your society. I'm saying, for me, since I figure we're going to hit the wall anyway, I would rather work from the standpoint of this kind of hopeless effort. Yes, I will try to get certain people in office because I don't necessarily think the political apparatus is completely destroyed and defunct. man, I don't think she's crazy for having a perspective. And all things being equal, yeah, we need a complete reorganization of how we arrange ourselves, our values, our priorities. It's just, I think values to some degree are driven by the way you arrange yourself. Again, it's like a chicken and an egg. How do you get to a society that has a better society when you're arranged in a way that precludes you from getting to that society? When the incentives are structured in a way. I don't believe in this, this shadowy group moving cards or pushing down deck chairs. I don't believe that at all. I think it boils down to incentive. Software. People function like software. You've bound scarcity. You're in a game space. Your status and your ability to feed yourself and get access to the things you need are completely associated with this thing in the game space called profit and cash. The thing isn't real in real life. The resources themselves are real. But the cash itself is supposed to map itself or graft itself to the actual real world. The relationship doesn't exist. People give value to stuff just because they give value to stuff. The cash flows in one direction, to the top. So yeah, Obama is going to give 95% of the wealth to the top 1%. Donald Trump is going to give even more to the top 1%. It has to do with the model itself. It has to do with the model. So yes, the model needs to be reorganized. I don't know how you reorganize the model from where we are. People are not even talking about automation, and automation is going to be a game changer in regards to potentially calling a crisis in our society. She's not crazy. You disagree with her, and maybe she was somewhat abrasive in dealing with MMT. That's fair, but it's just her perspective. Yeah, Luca, I agree. Debbie is definitely the real thing. Honesty, integrity first. Even when I disagree with her, I respect her. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, even when I disagree with her, I respect her. I mean, as I watched that show, I looked at it and thought to myself, yeah, some of the MMTers can be somewhat aggressive in getting their point across. Now, she was magnified by 40,000. Like, it's hard to get it across from the perspective of somebody who's not doing YouTube videos. I'll give this example. When I was in Egypt. I can't think of the name of it. It's just before you cross into Israel, into Eilat. It's like a beach town, Dahab. And I went to the pharmacy. Mind you, I was traveling. I was pretty ill when I was traveling. Instead of going to the hospital, I was supposed. When I had a transplant. This was back in 2007-ish. The transplant started to fail. The transplant pretty much did fail. Instead of going home, I booked a ticket to Amsterdam, a one-way ticket to Amsterdam, and I went traveling around the world. So I was trying to monitor my health and trying to deal with the medical stuff of it abroad. Many other countries, I could just go into the drugstore and get whatever I needed from the pharmacy. They didn't necessarily have the prescription thing going on. So I would do the research that I needed to figure out what I needed and buy the meds. Going into one of the pharmacies, this guy was being a complete asshole to the pharmacist. Now, he wasn't being an asshole in regards to what he said. He just wouldn't respond to the pharmacist. And then ultimately, he just left out. It was American. I was trying to explain to the pharmacist that if you're in Egypt for any amount of time, particularly if you're in Cairo, or you're going up and down the coast or up and down Egypt, the store owners can be immensely aggressive. They can be uber immensely aggressive. And being immensely aggressive as a shopper and in being in that country as Americans, you're not used to it. So your response, you have different responses, but often the response is, if you don't want something, don't go into the store. Don't make eye contact. Don't, peruse just for the sake of perusing. In his case, I would imagine he had to deal with, I don't know how long he had been in the country, but if you're dealing with people who are immensely aggressive, the person is going to have a response. It's not crazy. It's just being a human being. Now, in this particular case, the response was taken out on somebody who had nothing to do with it. He was a pharmacist. He was there purely to help the guy. He wasn't trying to rob or gyp the guy in any way. He was a pharmacist. The guy, from the standpoint, looked at him from all of his other experiences being in Egypt and responded that way. You can make a case that the guy responded inappropriately, but the guy responded based on environmental factors. The pharmacist, of course, is also going to respond in a particular way in regards to how he perceives Americans. Now, again, whatever you want to think of the pharmacist, he's responding also to environmental factors. The people didn't mean bad. They weren't intentionally trying to do bad. They had experiences that pushed them in a particular direction. Those people just tend to met like strangers in the night and went away with impressions. The impressions didn't take any context then in regards to the experiences that each was having. Yet, each of those were having real experiences. I make the point that it's kind of the same thing. I understand that people they get wed to certain ideas. And again, it's not like the ideas are wrong, so that's not what I'm saying at all. But yeah, I can't be mad at either party. I mean, it's one of those things. She's just made her opinion felt. She spoke her feelings. They got their opinions across. Let's move on. Let's move on. Real progressives. She's completely unknowledgeable of economics. Instead of asking questions, she flails about mouthing, calling folks a cult. Let me say unequivocally, not knowing the subject, and peeing off is worthless. That's fair. That's fair. You're right. You're totally right. But for the moment, take into account her worldview. And this is kind of my point of when I'm saying context of the person matters. From your standpoint, I get it. You look at it as she's having a go at something that she doesn't necessarily understand. From your standpoint, you look at this as being somewhat of an answer. Progressives get asked the question a lot. How do you pay for it? Your answer will be MMT gives that message on how you pay for it. I get it. I absolutely, totally get it. From her worldview, you don't even get to the point of doing that. That's all I'm saying. It's not that I'm saying. I'm just saying there are things that matter more. That's all. And this is not me undergutting what you guys are involved in or anything else. That's not what I'm doing. I guess I'm trying to tamp down conflict when the overwhelming majority of the things that you guys interact with dovetail. That's all. Yeah. Luca Clemente, Deborah expresses herself strongly, and she reached a point of utter frustration with the electoral system. For better or worse, the burden of proof is on MMT advocates to make the case for MMT. And look, Luca's not wrong on that. Meaning, it's not traditional economics in the sense that everyone understands it. So it's not this thing where people just automatically know it and automatically snap to it. The burden of proof, like you said, to some degree is on MMT. It has nothing to do with being fair or otherwise. It just kind of is. I know I hadn't heard anything about it, and I started learning more and more about it as it went on. I gotta be honest, there are parts where it gets to where I'm hazy on. Now, Debbie, she reacts strongly to stuff. And again, I'm making this point that if you're being bugged by something and you don't even believe that that thing is relevant, come on, you got to give her the benefit of the doubt on this. This is kind of my point of saying empathy. Alik Mater, Debbie speaks a lot of truth. I wish she wouldn't jump to bludgeon the more optimistic over the head, but I get why she's frustrated and feels that way. Agreed. Agreed. Unequivocally agree. I absolutely agree. When I'm making this point that empathy goes a long way, that goes both ways. That goes towards people who are more hopeful, saying, no, we can change this. Because understand, I don't think pessimism is a survival trait. In fact, unequivocally, I disbelieve that pessimism is a survival trait. Here's the thing, though. I understand why she does it too, and it's part and parcel to why she does it is because from that perspective, the other stuff doesn't matter. Like it's like you're walking around with this idea of these people don't get it. The sooner these people pull themselves from that system, the sooner we can have a better world. It's almost like the people who are hopeful to some degree are the problem from that worldview, because those hopeful people keep themselves a part of a system that fucks them over. That's the context. I gotta be honest, I don't think that context is fully wrong, even though I understand the hopeful thing. I don't know how you get out of a thicket. And I don't necessarily want some emancipatory, glorious revolution where heads come off. So, of course, I would prefer the political variation. I don't know how society fixes itself. That's my issue. Meaning, I somewhat assume that it collapses, that it hits a wall, in which case she gets what she wants. Now, I suspect she will want that before it gets to that point, but I guess I'm making a point that it hits a wall either way. You're going to get people cobbled together to make a change, either forcefully, based upon real things intruding upon this fake, false reality, or people making the choice on their own. She's making the point that the sooner you pull yourself from the political apparatus and join hands in that front, and I'm saying poetically join hands, the sooner you get a better world. That's, again, somewhat of a flat fact. Now, whether or not there's hope is the question in that sense. Whether or not people actually have some capacity to change. Friends, does MMT still work within capitalism? Yeah, it does. How are we paying $1 trillion for the military budget every year? I mean, we're still running deficits. So we continuously run them year after year with what, $19 trillion in debt? We create our own money. Now, so again, that's a flat fact of MMT at that point. We're sovereign currency. So the United States can cover its bets with regards to any capacity. Now, whether there's inflation or not has more to do with the resources themselves than it has to do with, you know, this thing of put it this way, the basic premise is we have fiat currency. So we don't necessarily have it tied to anything. It's not tied to gold or anything else. The thing that gives the money supply value is that we say the money supply has value. It's just perspective. MMT kind of makes this point that taxes and revenue that the government raises, that doesn't necessarily directly fund spending. We have sovereign currency. The government can always pay its debts. That's not myth, that's not conjecture, that's just a flat fact. Hell, I think this video of Alan Greenspan saying as much. The thing that people always bring up is this thing of inflation. And I guess you can make the case that the debate revolves around that to some degree. But it's not wrong. The government can always cover its bets. Catherine Horaeus. Which society has been able to print its way to prosperity? I'm just asking for the case, so let me at least read case studies. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, I don't take issue with MMT or anything else. It doesn't solve the problem. The problem is the incentive structure. It doesn't solve the problem. Having MMT doesn't solve environmental degradation. MMT may help you get certain social programs, that's true, but when we're talking about the things that we do that adversely affect our world, no, not so much. The problem is how we're arranged. It's how we organize ourselves. It's how we allow markets and cash to be the ruling factor over real life. Now, it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way at all. You can have a society that's geared around getting technology to do the labor. All right now, 90% of the jobs can be automated. In the future, more than 90% will be automated. The goal should be to get people to the point where when they get up in the morning, they're doing what they want to do. Not because they have to, not because they're compelled to, but because they want to do it. They will still be working that society, but that work will more so revolve around non-repetitive tasks. Yeah, man, you can have any world you want. The question becomes, are you willing to deal with the consequences of having that world, that arrangement? It's like a chessboard. As you're playing the game, you have a certain configuration based upon the moves that you made and the decisions that you made. What matters more to you, your value system, is expressed in the game space. Well, this is our world. Now, we have a certain arrangement of energy of sorts, an arrangement that tries to resist change at that point. Because change allows certain people to get fabulously wealthy while everyone else got exploited. How you break out that is a $100,000 question. It's a question that Debbie tackles, and she hits head on. And she makes the point that you break out that with integrity, with a certain amount of bravery, with reaching across the aisle, with not necessarily being hostile, with not necessarily looking at those people as being your enemy. It's just being a goddamn human being and recognizing that other people are human beings and dealing with people on that level. That's not a lefty thing or righty thing. That's not an us and a them. In fact, it's a breaking of the us and them. Look, and like again, she's right. When I would make my case, I usually make the case and said summits with this idea of pulling people together to work under the political apparatus, because in my mind the political apparatus is also broken. When I'm saying working under the political apparatus, I'm saying determining on a mass scale what you want. What does the public want? At that point, you're talking about a workers' rights movement. It's people saying, you're not getting my vote unless you represent us. In that case, you have the mass of people behind your back to make sure that the person who you don't want don't get in office. And at that point, it's not a lefty or righty thing. It's a country thing. Where does the bell curve, or where does the bulk of the country end up in? That's a different country. Majority of the country will go for single-payer healthcare or some kind of government-run healthcare. In that sense, free public college, increases the minimum wage. The country is further to the left than the left-leaning party in this country. I mean, that by itself is amazing. And yeah, that bespeaks of the corruption that she talks about. But the secondary question becomes, does that mean that the political apparatus is completely broken and defunct and that nothing can get done? I'm not convinced. I'm just not convinced. I think it is corrupt. I think it is broken. I think it is immensely caters to cash. But I don't think it's broken to the degree that it can't be fixed or used. And by the way, even if it was, it's not crazy focusing on it. Because it's almost like saying, you've heard this saying, I don't fight fascists because I'm a winner, I fight fascists because they're fascists. It's the same thing. You're essentially going after something, not necessarily because you believe you can win, but because you have no other choice but to go against that thing. even if you full well believe that it's completely hopeless and there's nothing you can do about it, you still go against it. You still push and bitch and moan and bite and claw your way at it. You have no other choice, no other option than to do that. I was playing this guy, and we get down to the very end, and he does something, and I'm like, why didn't you go there? He's like, dude, you have like 2 queens on the board, I have a king, and I'm just running around. So yeah, but you still play the best move. I think opportunities can sometimes be surprising. That's all. Troy Sanders, I believe, is broken to the point of a whole new redesign. I agree. But does that mean that you don't do anything with regards to trying to affect that redesign? Like, and how do you affect that redesign without capturing power? Look, all hopes or attempts at capturing power start at organization. If it was me, if I had the money of Tony Stark's Iron Man, hell, if I had the money of Mitt Romney, hell, if I had $1 million and I wanted to focus on a goal like that, I would focus on workers. I would create some kind of scaffolding to pull all the parties together, meaning all the minor parties, Democratic Socialists of America, Progressive Independence Party, the Draft Sanders, all that stuff. And in pulling all those people together under scaffolding, I would try to pull in unions also. I would have a neural network, meaning I would have a brainchild of those different groups to be able to kind of almost like a meeting or a conscious effort at changing things. A conscious and specific effort that has only one goal: to change how we are organized. I would then target workers. Walmart, Burger King, McDonald's, Old Navy. If they're making a bare subsistence, yes, we should go send somebody to talk to them. Pull all those people into our fold. And when we march, we have mass scale. That's a movement. Now that applying and pushing itself against the political apparatus, look, I think it works. I don't necessarily think it's for naught. That's all. Catherine Horace, pretty sure Bernie did more for America than any other 74-year-old in history, but that's my guess. I agree. You can take shots at him, and I've taken my shots at him. People's like, I don't think you were being fair to Sanders. No, I was being fair to Sanders. But I'm also being fair to Sanders when I say, yeah, he has. He's woke more people up than at any time in my lifetime. When people look around and say, oh, holy shit, what's going on? We're being had. Yeah, that was Sanders. I would even make the case that part of so much of the ire against them has more to do with people waking up and being, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not disenchanted, but they wanted him to be more. I guess that's what it is. Their expectations weren't met. They had certain expectations of him, and those expectations weren't met. And I think some of the ire, or most of the ire, is coming from that. I don't think it's the people hates the guy. I don't think it's that. I don't even think it's one of those things they dislike the guy. I think they do like his platform. They didn't like this aspect of him not being able to stand up and condemn the cheating. Because ultimately, not condemning the cheating essentially co-sign fraud. Co-sign fraud. Democratic Party cheated. Sanders goes with the party line and blames Russia. Russia had nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. Smokey over the line. A united populace. Okay, Rob. Okay, I gotta do Rob first. Rob, Illinois. No, MMT just is, and it's not a cult. That's where I draw the line. I feel you, man. Do you have to be that weird to it? That's all I'm saying. Is it so wed to it where I am so angry and I'm so pissed at her that now she's just a horrible person. It's like, come on. She had a difference of opinion. This is what I mean when I say fragmentation of the left. You would have people say, Sam Cedar is X. This other person is Y. This other person is Z. And now this person did something different that I don't particularly like. And so now that person goes in my category of Z1. Come on, man. Come on, dog. All of you are the same thing. You may have a different of his opinion and inflection point. How you see the world may be somewhat different. How you weigh things may be somewhat different. That's fair. Can you have enough empathy to allow her to have her space? And she have enough empathy to allow people who are more hopeful to have theirs? Come on. No, I'm not with the real news. I just grabbed the t-shirt. Kurt DK55. I hear Debbie say she's not even trusted the result of GB last time. Result in GB. Great Britain? I don't know. I have 100% trust and integrity of people conducting elections in GB and Scandinavia where I am. Not here. I don't know what takes place there. Not here. And I suspect that part of her context is based upon where she is. Like, you see the world based upon your own context. There's a reason why we just assume that the world could be taken over by aliens. In our context, we have a paradigm of left and right, or how we, you know, this kind of aggressive paradigm. In our particular context, when we've had somebody else come to our shores, that person has not turned out good for the weaker nation. Let's put it that way. But that's our context. That's how we see the world, because that's the way the world is for us. Doesn't mean it's that way for out there. If she's looking out at the world, she may be looking through that context. She's not crazy. I mean, most people deal with things based on their own experiences. Now, if you're in a society where your reality, for the most part, is being stripped away, what I mean is, you can't trust the elections. And look, I agree with her. I think Sanders co-signed fraud. You're seeing voting machine irregularities. You're not crazy if you're looking at that saying that looks a little dicey to me. I've seen someone hack a voting machine. I've seen this computer scientist, a guy with a PhD in computer comp sci. He was making the point that these machines are hackable, and we saw he was able to do it. So she's not crazy about the election thing. The moment that you realize that your reality is somewhat suspect, meaning all that you know is coming from outside information, from outside yourself. How do you know what you know? How do you even know what time you were born? Let alone what took place in an election in this country. Now, from that bit of logic, you can understand how the bottom falls away. What's real? What's real becomes more slippery. When your reality is being monetized, meaning somebody gets a buck or gets some kind of incentive off of shaping a particular worldview or shaping a particular narrative, you can understand people being somewhat skeptical of the reality that's being shaped around them or that they see around them. They're not being crazy, they're responding to factors in their environment. I don't know, I didn't see her say anything about the election in GB. But again, if you're dealing with a country that shapes certain factors, then yeah, it's possible that she's looking at it that way. Oh, thank Rob. Well, I didn't say anything bad about you. Or MMT. I don't think MMT is a cult. I think you guys are animated because you look at it as this is a potential solution to our issues. Yeah, I don't think that's a cult at all. I'm just making this point that be a little bit more empathetic. Like, from her standpoint, if she's being inundated by people who are really adamant about MMT, and she's having this conversation of you're not even going to get to the point of being able to have that conversation. You can see where she's coming from. You can see her context. I understand being unhappy with her talking about it that way. But come on. See your point. I know you can see your point. It wasn't just the Voting Rights Act, yeah. Shouldn't the reality of the majority mean more than the minority, or people's perspective skewed? You heard me say petty dramas. Petty dramas. There's so many big things. There's so many big things. Like, there's so many things that matter. People are being adversely affected in so many ways. Just get sick of petty dramas. That's all. It seems like the left. And look, maybe this is just a people thing. Like I said, I don't know what takes place on the left, so I don't have context on the other side of things. But this just seems... I understand people have feelings about it because people feel wed to it. But come on. Allow people to have their space, man. That's all I'm saying. Because, I mean, if I'm being honest, I like both. It's one of those things where I see the need for both. There was MLK and Martin, and I know I bring up the civil rights a lot. I compare the two, the Civil Rights Act and how we're doing this kind of human rights thing, or this people's rights. I think those things are very similar. I think this is the next evolution of the Civil Rights Act. I think when whites realize, and maybe they would never realize, but if they understood that race was somewhat of a trick, that ultimately the issue was class, the distinction of race was made, and it allowed certain people in society to feel like they were a step above others, even though they had a nickel to their name. It was a trick. Unfortunately, that trick has had immense ebbies. Now, as society kind of advances itself, understand part and parcel to the reason that slavery existed in the first place was because it was a capitalistic enterprise. It was for profit. How do you make a profit? You get cheap labor. Hell, with a slave, you can have free labor. So now you can export the profits, or you can raise the profits to the people who are essentially owning that slave. It was also profit for the people who were selling them, meaning that king in Africa that thought he was going to make a buck. And I'm saying a buck based upon whatever they were trading for it. The exploitation carried on. Changing the system is important. It's immensely important. And realizing, in that case, of saying, look, this thing runs on this level of exploitation that's been instantiated from the founding of this country, starting it off on the genocide and following it up with free labor through force, chain and a whip. I consider those things similar in the sense of this thing of in a sense of an evolution of the civil rights movement, getting this thing to understand that whether it's black, white, gay, Hispanic, whatever, I don't care. You're a human being, you have value. And as that, I want you in the movement saying, I'm a human being and I have value. Just like those people used to say, I am a man, I want people to saying, I am a man. I want them to mean that from the standpoint of a human being. I think those things are immensely similar. When MLK and Malcolm X would get into these arguments, you can see a debate on YouTube. You needed both. You needed both. You needed people to see the extreme, and you needed people to see the moderate. You don't believe that having a Malcolm X made a Martin Luther King more palatable. Debbie's perspective is one of revolution. whatever you want to call it. Now, whether that's a violent revolution or whether that's a, political revolution, it is a revolution. It's people taking power in their own hands and saying, we're pulling ourselves out of the political apparatus. Whatever takes place after that is something fundamentally different. That's a revolution. I'd imagine she'd make the point that she would rather have it to be a peaceful one where people are coming together in this kind of unison and recognizing they're all human beings and that their likenesses are more expansive than the things that they disagree on. Just take the other person's perspective into account. That's all. That's all I'm saying. Love James Baldwin. Man is fucking amazing. Rob, you should be. Like, I'm not, tenacity is not a bad thing, man. Particularly tenacity in defense of something brave and awesome. Your objectives are not wrong. Just understand that you and her have the same objectives. How you reach that point is just different. The objective is the same. If you're going to coalesce around this idea of shared objectives. All of them. I mean, and that's not just for the left. That's also for elements of the right that agree with these principles of, hey, I don't want us getting into these wars for no reason. I want the resources of the country to be used in the country. Now, we can have a conversation on a degree, but at the very least kind of sign up saying, yes, I agree with these principles. I don't give a shit what side of the political spectrum you're on. I don't care if you don't want to go bombing one of those other countries because you want to get us embroiled in a conflict. That you're somewhat unempathetic in regards to what happens to the people abroad. You just don't want to get us involved. I don't care. I don't care of your reasons. If you don't want us involved in other countries, then yes, I like what you're talking about, at least in the context of that very specific point. If you think the resources of the country should be used within the country, then yes. In that specific point, I agree with you. If you believe that Hillary Clinton, the Democratic Party, should be investigated, yes, they should be. Somebody accused a foreign government of something that the foreign government didn't do. Yes, there should be an investigation into those things. I would imagine there's right much overlap. Whether it's the labels or whether it's something else. Whether it's this thing of needing to find disagreements. I don't know, man. What is your objective? And this is not just for the left. This is for Trump supporters who were Obamaites at one point. What is your objective? Is your objective to have some kind of conflict, or is your objective to find areas of commonality to actually make change? When people get tired of conflict, at some point, I would hope they find commonality to make change. Now, you're not going to find that commonality if you're doing this political thing where I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm a progressive. I don't like you because of your label. That's not going to get you anywhere. Identity politics is not going to get you anywhere. What gets you over the finish line is economics. It's economics. Even if we don't agree on everything. I would imagine there's a Venn diagram of agreement. Moo labels. Independent outsider. I'm an independent outsider. Luca Clemente, I agree with you about the Democratic Party being a farce, Bob. Why would any voter send the Democratic Party a pity? Agreed. Agreed. In court, the Democratic Party is forced into the ridiculously comic position of having to own up to the fact that as a political party, they can lie whenever they want to lie. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. Now, If you had a party that said, you can't trust us, we can lie whenever we want to lie, why would you send them a red cent? Why would you send them anything at that point? Why would you send them anything? Jack Fresco is fucking amazing. Troy Sanders. Bucky Fuller, social engineering is possible. We can cherry pick the best ideas and benefit the masses. Agreed. Jack Fresco is absolutely amazing. Peter Joseph has taken it to a level of getting into details in regards to explaining economics and stuff like that. But Jack Fresco is amazing. The man is amazing. Like, his ideas, his plans. I would wager that Star Trek, how Star Trek is arranged, is probably a resource-based economy. I would wager it's probably a resource-based economy. The values that Star Trek espouses, I would argue, to some degree, is coming from the resource-based economy. Meaning, after some kind of war, the people got together and said, we can't keep doing this. And I would wager they said, how do we arrange ourselves in a way that prevents war and poverty? They probably even said, what were the roots of it? Meaning, they probably didn't have this idea that there was somebody pulling the strings. They probably asked the question, what were the roots? How did we end up in the situation that we ended up? I would wager they ended up with this idea of the fiscal incentive, maximizing profit, scarcity, not paying attention to real things. And I would imagine they sought to get past that. A resource-based economy was probably what they came up with. Fresco, his ideas are amazing. I like the guy. Bob Riminarso, what would progressive causes be if Hillary was elected? Isn't that enough to answer for why Trump? Yes, that's true. We made that point before. Hillary Clinton, Trump was... Look, not voting for Hillary Clinton is risky. But it's risky from the standpoint of, it's somewhat of a gambit. I voted for Jill Stein. I was not going to co-sign cheating. Beyond not co-signing cheating, I did understand that there was more of a chance for a progressive with Hillary Clinton losing than it was for her winning. The crapshoot was Donald Trump himself. That was a crapshoot. Independent outsider. Well, wouldn't a resource-based economy only work if the public controlled the resources and not the government and the elite? That's true. That's true. Now, the point of the Jack Fresco would make is, right now, private enterprise controls a huge amount of resources, massive amount. Now, people always complain, I don't want the government controlling those resources. Well, you have private enterprise controlling those resources, meaning you have nothing to do with them. What's common heritage has been essentially sucked up and absorbed to a 1%, to a very small percentage. Now, a resource-based economy looks at it and says, we need to figure out what we have to work with across the planet. And based upon what we have to work with across the planet, we come up with this idea of what's a sustainable level that we can exist on. Meaning, how much of the resources can we use without jeopardizing human life? It's common sense on top of common sense. The technology itself seeks to deal with this idea of scarcity, of dealing with this thing of human lack. How can we make sure people have the things that those people need? If people have the things that they need, those people will be less inclined to exhibiting aberrant behavior. The stress of a society, meaning the things that society shows as the vagaries of it, war, crime, corruption, those things are almost like a sick society expressing itself. It's like if you were missing vitamin A or vitamin D, what would your body do if your body was missing those things? A society is similar in that effect when it misses certain things that it needs, meaning human beings as individuals. Say, for example, it wasn't society. Say, for example, it was one person, and that one person was lacking something that person needed. What is the aberrant behavior that person is going to lack? Express that out to 50% of the population being in poverty. On top of that, dump in massive amount of guns, Dump in a massive amount of corruption. Dump in an inability for those people to express themselves politically. What's the society you're going to get? What does it look like? It look like our society now. Jack Fresco takes the position of, let's get rid of all that. Give people what they need and make all that stuff free. Meaning, there is no cash. There's resources. There is no cash. You reset the values of the society itself. Consumption is not just for the sake of consumption. Consumption is looked upon as we have finite resources. We need to allow people to have access to things. They don't necessarily need to completely own those things. If you go to play golf, the golf clubs are there. You go in whenever you want to play. If you want a house, you go, you choose the house. The amazing part of this is that those things are, you have more to everybody. Like, everyone has access to the things that they need, and for the most part, the things that they want. There's still work in that society, but it's done in a way that doesn't necessarily completely subsume the individual's life. In a capitalistic society, your decision space, your freedom it's determined by how much cash you have. If you get sick and you fall out of work, oh, you're going to suffer. If someone in your family gets sick and you're trying to take care of them in addition to work your job, you're going to suffer. The society doesn't take into account the people of that society. It's purely based on this thing of cash. It looks at people as being purely individualistic. Even though the society doesn't have to be geared that way. It's geared that way because it allows a certain amount of profit to accrue to the top. Now, Jack's Fresco idea is, yeah, the people themselves control the resources, but the decisions are made based upon the technical details. So if you're going to build a laptop, you're going to build the best fucking laptop that a person can buy. You're not going to throw it away in 2 years or 3 years. You're going to build the best fucking laptop you can buy. And part and parcel, you're not throwing away in 2 or 3 years because you don't want to. You want to use those resources. You want to conserve those resources because you have a finite planet. So that laptop is just going to be built in a way where you can change the parts out. You don't have to keep throwing the parts away. You can change those parts out. Now, you think about that level of design throughout your society. So sidewalks, those things pick up heat automatically. They convert that heat into something else to use for the society itself. The cities are arranged in circles and made in circles. That's the lowest energy level. It allows people to get around the city through mass transit. I mean, one technological advancement after the next. Houses are energy independent, meaning those houses heat and cool themselves based upon solar panels being onto the roofs. It's almost like your geometric design, the design itself follows the function of whatever you're using it for. The idea is amazing. And you're talking about a completely revolutionized society where he's talking about 10 to 15 years where you can convert a society into this thing of providing for everyone in that society. And by society, he means the entire planet. Jack Fresco is amazing. Agreed, money is a tool, not a resource. People don't realize that. Friends, Das Kapital. Das Kapital is damn good. Karl Marx. Karl Marx gives the best explanation of money and how it uses in a society, I mean how it functions, than anybody else I've ever come across. Part servable laptops. Live Vegan. Jamal, why do you block people who take issue with SP or DL? I don't know what that is. Throwing black peace activists under the bus. Is that fair or wise? Do you think it's warranted criticism if done in a polite way? I don't block anybody. People say this. I've never blocked anybody. I've heard people say it. It never crosses my mind to block people. I don't care if people make comments. As long as it's not being abusive. I don't care. But understand, YouTube and Google does that on their own. It's not me taking action or anything else. The filters can be somewhat pit bulls. If links or whatever are in it, I think it automatically blocks it. But it's not something that I'm doing. Dax Jacobson, Jamal, you want everyone who has something to give it up so poor people can be rich. No, I want a society that doesn't have corruption or greed or poverty. I want a highly technological society that meets the needs of the people in that society. Now, when you're saying rich people giving up their stuff, money has no value. It's a tool of the system itself. Now, you can have any society that you want, depending upon how you're arranged, how you're okay with being arranged. Right now, you have the billionaire stepping over the homeless guy. In my conception, money is a tool. It's just a tool. How goods are moved throughout society. So, I have to ask the question, is it fair that someone can have $1 billion and someone else can have none? And if I can arrange society in a way that eliminates those things, eliminates poverty and war and corruption, is it a better society? I want to say the answer is yes. I want to say the answer is yes. And look, the answer is not just yes from the standpoint of rich and poor, it's also yes from the standpoint of ecology. You will hit a cliff, or hit a roof, or hit a wall. You're going to hit a wall. The damage and the calamity, the terrors that people experience in our world, they don't have to. Those things are contrived. They're contrived based upon the model and the way people organize themselves. People can make a choice to organize themselves differently. It's a democratic decision. All of the items on this planet are common heritage. I stand by that. Nobody was there to give anybody anything. Anything that was taken by blood. There is no situation where we look at it and says, hey, I know this guy stole your purse, but because this guy stole your purse, well, he was the last one with your purse. I am perfectly okay with this idea of a resource-based economy. Common heritage. People are being exploited. Yes, I'm okay with taking from those who've exploited others. The society was arranged in a way that allowed those people to get a massive advantage. So yeah, I have no issue with it. I have no issue with it. Yeah, but it goes beyond this just no more poor people thing. Like, say for the moment that you gave everyone a universal basic income. Even if you eliminate poverty, you're still stuck with this issue of corruption. Like, you have a Ponzi scheme. You have a Ponzi scheme in which money is flowing through the system and is funneled to the top. Now, at a certain point, that fiat, the currency became fiat currency. Take it from the perspective of jobs and wages. At a certain point, wages stopped going up. Now, for the uber rich, they went immensely high. Those people did amazingly well under Reagan and the trickle-down economics thing. Everyone else didn't. Not everyone else didn't. The people who, how can I say this? Yeah, it's a Ponzi scheme. I mean a Ponzi scheme in the sense of, so at a certain point, wages stop going up. When wages stop going up, those people still spent more than they had. They just borrowed the money. So now you had a situation where people were being loaned cash. And again, that cash was just being funneled back to the top. In every situation, the money supply just goes directly to the top. It's going to collapse. It's a Ponzi scheme. I mean, think about it. How, from an ecological standpoint, you have a finite world. In that finite world, you have a system that says, I need to burn resources as fast as possible. I burn through resources as fast as possible because that allows somebody at the top to make more profit, and it allows me to keep jobs. I keep burning through resources in order to keep jobs. You don't have to burn through resources. You can design things in a way that will last 10, 15 years. If you design them in that way, though, you're going to lose those jobs. You're going to go out of business. Your product is going to be too good. So you have to plan in a certain amount of obsolescence. I need this product to go bust in a certain amount of time so this person can buy another product. You have finite resources. In this system, it pays no mind to the fact that you have a finite planet. So yeah, you're going to go and you're going to pull stuff out the ground. You're going to burn the shit in the sky. Doesn't matter that people are catching cancer. Doesn't matter that you're causing earthquakes in certain areas. The ecological impact matters less than the profit, even though profit isn't real. What about from a technology standpoint? You have a system that says maximize your profit. Part and parcel to maximizing your profit is lowering the amount of money that you pay for wages. I need to pay less so I can make more. Initially, you had the slave. You can get that slave without having anything. The government takes your property, meaning takes those slaves and says, yes, slavery is no longer legal. Oh, the capitalists, what are they going to do? The government, the big bad government, is taking away their property. It's taking away their slaves. So now they got to pay people. Oh, fuck, that sucks. Paying people a wage, that sucks. Now, this, of course, is going to graduate to the point of these people saying, how can we pay less and less for labor? Now, part and parcel to that is shipping jobs out the country so you can pay people less in that sense. But the best option is to automate it. If I can turn that into a robot, I can fire all these people and I can accrue all the profits. That's great, but all these people lost their jobs. Now, this is a capitalistic impulse. The person is not doing anything mean or nefarious. He's going to eat his Cheerios. He thinks what he's doing is perfectly okay. The calamity, terrifying calamity of not having a job doesn't matter. He's maximizing his profit. The model compels that particular behavior, meaning more and more people are going to lose their jobs, meaning more and more people are going to be unemployed, which means more and more people are not going to be able to buy the products. So yes, even though he has a robot cranking out all this stuff, his business goes bust because nobody can afford his product. The system eats itself. That's what I mean when I say it's a Ponzi scheme. Alright guys, it is almost 4 in the morning. My wife is throwing me a party tomorrow. It's a luau. So I'm probably not going to do a video tomorrow. I am going to do a video Sunday night. All my subscribers, all my patrons, you guys are going to be able to call in to that one. I think I put the number in the patron accounts so people can see it. If I haven't, I'll check it to make sure. Anybody can respond though. Meaning it's an open video. Anyone can see it. Anybody can respond using the chat window. But patrons will be allowed to call in. It's just something extra for the patrons. I appreciate them. That's all. And there's a lot of stuff that I want to do with the channel. And I want to get to the point where I can grow this channel where this is more robust. I'll put it that way. And I can devote more time to it. And so, yeah, I do want to, like I said, embolden patrons in that case. So, I want to give something back in appreciation. So, the phone number will be in the patron account. At least I thought I sent the email. If I haven't sent the email out, I'll make a video and put it in Patreon so people can see it. That's going to be on Sunday at 8 p.m. So, I don't know the topic yet. What I probably do is just start off with a topic and then see where it goes. So, yeah, I think it'd be fun. Like a 420, that would be badass. My wife was telling me about going down to DC. In DC, pot is illegal. It's legal to smoke. It's not legal to sell. I know that sounds funny. So they've had parties where they were handing out pot because again, it's legal to smoke. It's not legal to sell in DC. Congress pays for things. Congress is supposed to pay for things. No, Dax, I won't do a video tomorrow. I don't know what time the luau is going to end. I think it starts at 5, so it may go on for a bit. So I'm probably not going to do one tomorrow, but definitely I'll be here Sunday. So, guys, I appreciate you guys showing up. Absolutely appreciate you guys showing up to hear me rattle off. Yeah, I appreciate you guys showing up, man. This is my birthday week is coming up this week, so I will probably be on for my birthday. And in fact, I enjoy doing live. I enjoy the commentary, the back and forth. I don't do it as often because I think people tend to click on videos that aren't as long, and this may just be in my head. So the hour-long videos I don't think gets as much airplay. Not to mention a lot of it is just us talking back and forth and responding. But I enjoy doing them. So, alright guys, if you enjoy the content, feel free to share, write, subscribe. I always say write. I should say share, like, and subscribe. And of course, you can always support the work through Patreon. Thanks guys. And have a good night. Well, I don't know if it's night where you guys are, but it's almost 4 in the morning here, so signing off and good night.